afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah Pearson, and you have just stepped into the National Learning Community for SAMHSA's Native Connections, SAP to TAP Connections, Sustaining Your Native Connections Program, Part 2. Hello and good afternoon. My name is Sarah Pearson. I am the Native Connections subject matter expert for Native Connections and Tribal Action Planning, and I'm joined by Sienna Hunter. Kuye. Sienna? Sienna, are you there?
Sorry, I think my Wi-Fi just kind of went. It's a little windy outside where I'm at today. Um, I missed whatever you were just saying. My apologies.
No worries. I just introduced myself, welcoming everybody to the Native
Awesome.
Connections National Learning Community, SAP to TAP Connection, Part 2.
All right. Well, I'm Sienna Hunter-Sujay. I am one of the supervisors on the Native Connections team, and I'm also a SAMHSA TTA coordinator, and also want to welcome you all. And I am hailing from my native lands of Shinnecock out on the eastern of Long Island, and we've got a windy day.
Right. How many people do we have with us today, Mark, so far?
We're pushing right against 14. We got people still coming in.
Great. As you're coming in, just if you don't mind, take a moment to put your name and your program location into the chat box. We would like to know who's joining us this afternoon. Do we have a shy group, Sienna? I don't know. I want to hear who's joining us. Where are
It
you
looks
coming
like
in
we do.
from?
Yeah, I'm curious if anyone's gotten snow. I know certain regions just got some more snow.
April snow, that's a real special one. Kim Cossack from Washoe Tribe is here. Julie Flett. Hi, Judy. June Halfaker from Northeast Oklahoma Connection Group. Kathy Montella from the Northeast Oklahoma Connection Group. Susan Mayers. She's the evaluator. Oh, good. We have an evaluator from Fallon Paiute Shoshone Tribe in Northern Nevada. Good to see you guys. Thank you for joining us. So I know people are just kind of joining us this morning. I'm kind of stalling to get more people involved because I want to see which regional learning community people are joining regularly. I'm trying to get people to either think about their RLCs or to tell us which one they're joining. There might be someone on the call that doesn't know what I'm talking about. If you've never heard of a regional learning community, you haven't lived. You've got to get there. They're wonderful groups that meet monthly or quarterly with and among other Native Connections peers, grantees that have a lot of wisdom to share. So it's a nice peer-to-peer interaction. And something, if you need more information on that, reach out to your GTA and they will hook you up. Give us a sense in the chat box which regional learning community you join regularly if you do join one. Judy, do you come to any? Do you know if you could join any RLCs?
Yes.
Ah, okay. Oh, Tony, Tony, you're on all of them. Thank you, man. Pacific Northwest, great. Good. Well, for our friends that just joined us, please consider joining an RLC if you haven't joined one. It's really a lot of fun. Anyone that was with us last time, we'd love to hear a little bit about your thoughts on if you plan to sustain your Native Connections program into the future by elevating it to a tribal action plan. We'd like to kind of see where your thinking is going with that. Are you unsure or have had no conversation about that yet? Put a 0 in the box. Number 1, if you're just thinking about it now or recently. Number 2, put that in the box if you're planning to discuss it with your team and leadership sometime this year. Put a 3 in there if you've started discussing a TAP, but you need some help. And 4, if you already have a TAP, that would be wonderful to know. Hey, Jenny. Susan Mayers. Oh, wow. Good. You have where, Susan, where you are from Fallon Paiute. Wonderful. I'm so glad you've joined us because it would be wonderful to hear your expertise on that, your experience. I'm going to wait a second to see if anybody else has anything to share on tribal action plan interest or what you're working on. Sarah, oh, yeah. Hey, Sarah. She says we have a TAP that will expire this year and are working on a new one. Sarah, remind me, what community are you in? What tribe? I should remember. I'm so sorry, dear. I don't remember. Okay, so oh, Sisseton Wapata. Wonderful. Okay, we've done a webinar with you before. Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, Sienna, this next question is from you. I'll turn it to you.
I was just really curious for those who were at our last National Learning Community. What were your top takeaways from the last session? And you could drop them in the chat. What did you learn? What were you curious about? Just your top takeaways. Maybe for those who are joining for the first time, if you have a top takeaway that you'd like to learn from today, maybe you can put that in chat as well. Hopefully Sarah and I will get to it. And if not, then happy to connect directly to answer questions too.
And I would say takeaway or maybe questions, unanswered question or questions you might have from what we covered last time. Some of the things we covered was we introduced everyone to the idea of a tribal action plan, what it is, where it came from, and how similar it is and different to the Native Connections Strategic Action Plan. We talked and we discussed about how the TAP opens up opportunities for community partnerships and engaging tribal leadership in working with the community to address alcohol and substance misuse and other things like suicide prevention. And we talked about how the Tribal Action Plan supports tribal self-determination and sovereignty. So it kind of gives you a hint. Well, Sienna, should we just do a recap and then move forward?
Let's do it.
Okay, fabulous. All right. So we'll give you a little bit of a recap and then talk a little bit about how moving from a strategic action plan to a tribal action plan takes us on a journey shifting our focus from the program centered work to more policy level, broader work that we can do across the community, and next steps to think about if you want to do a tribal action plan, how to get started. So just to recap, what is a tribal action plan? I want to turn this over to Sienna.
Sure. So one of the important things about the tribal action plan that it is a tribal-led plan, and it's to address the alcohol and substance misuse and other relevant issues. So mental health, behavioral health. It does reflect a tribe's unique culture, and that's the most important thing about a tribal action plan is that you integrate the culture and the language of the community. It is driven by those tribal needs, challenges, and a collective vision. And then this information is shared with the federal departments to inform them of what is your needs and the work that you're looking to do for your community. It's reviewed, it's not scored by any federal interagency committee, and it is supported by SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse Mental Health Administration. But the most important thing is that this has to come from the community. It has to speak the language of the community. It is unique. We have a framework and a template, but you integrate all of your community and your language and your culture within it.
And you make it look the way you want it to look, and you bring in the people you want to bring in. And we have some examples towards the end of our presentation here to share what a TAP looks like. in practice. This is just to give you a sense of what the process is, and you'll see the similarities right away from the process that you've gone through to develop your Native Connections Strategic Action Plan. At the top, at 1 o'clock, we start looking at data. That's where everything starts with data these days now, doesn't it? Even the data, we did this hundreds and hundreds of years ago, looking at data to determine where we want to go, what we want to do. Taking an environmental scan to kind of look at some of the gaps that we need to address. Gathering more data through creating or hosting a gathering of Native Americans, a gathering of Alaska Natives, mobilizing the community, getting them interested, but gathering their thoughts, their information, their interest, their data. Then beginning to take all that information, amassing all together and starting to develop your tribal action plan vision statement. And from that vision statement, creating and unearthing goals that you'll need to get to that vision statement and so on. Then your TAP implementation, resources that you'll need to develop to get to that vision statement and to do those goals. People, other resources like people, space, what kinds of services and systems you might want to work with, and who can do the work. People, places, things, resources, all of that. And when you have that amassed and you have your tribal action plan ready to go, you want to monitor and improve it as you go forward and make those improvements along the way, spiraling up and spiraling up. TAPs are usually about 5 years long, and they are renewed. They're a living document. I also want to cover what we covered last time, just reviewing SAMHSA's 6 steps of sustainability. Many of you may have already seen these, but I want to review because it's really important. As you're, well, let me first ask in the chat box, can people put in, is anybody here in your last year of your strategic action plan? Your last, or maybe your second to last year? Who is working on your last years of your Native Connections program grant? Anybody on the call with us says this is a urgent concern? Is sustainability urgent? It would be if it's in your last few years. Okay, so no urgency yet there, Sienna. We're okay. But as you start to kind of get closer to your last few years in your Native Connections grant, you want to start thinking about, and you've already been doing this if you've been following the Native Connections approach, building ownership among stakeholders. So important. Sharing results to secure more funding. If you're going to get more funding, funders want to know what can you do to secure the funding that you're getting. They want to see that their investment is going to be sound. Tracking and publicizing your outcomes, really important. Don't keep it a secret that you're reaching all of these young people and making a difference. Identifying program champions. Are there any tribal council members that can get out in front of a parade for you and really sing your praises and get out there and help the program build awareness in the community? Investing in capacity, training, more staff, volunteers, and identifying a variety of resources so that you don't have just one funding stream, so that when the funding stream dries up, your program dries up. You want to start bringing in other funding streams. So if you're doing all that, you're already on your way to a tribal action plan anyway. So let's take a look at some examples of what other Native Connections programs have done in the past to work on and build sustainability. Build ownership among stakeholders. Collaboration, huge. Alakana had this one example. They collaborated with the tribal court to bring teachings and healing opportunities. Turtle Mountain developed an MOU agreement with their tribal entities and other community partners, really important. Selawik in Alaska compiled and disseminated culturally appropriate information about mental health, substance abuse, and suicide intervention services. So useful, getting the word out there, building awareness. And Mescalero Apache, they addressed barriers to using traditional and other mental health and wellness services. Also very helpful. They're getting the word out. They're not keeping anything a secret. Sharing results and tracking and publicizing outcomes, also not keeping things a secret. Osage, they presented local statistics and information about suicide and substance abuse issues and resources to other groups in the community. Shingle Springs used evaluation and surveillance data to improve their program and demonstrate results to tribal leaders. Santo Domingo, and I think that's New Mexico, they developed a surveillance system and data related to suicide incidents and treatment. That's pretty good. And Mescalero also collected data on program services before and after to assess efficacy, and they disseminated information to their community on the benefits of the services that they were providing. Turn this over to you, Sienna.
The other really important thing is to be able to identify those program champions in your community. And so one community, they really made an effort to look at their local leadership and empower the communities to find and develop local solutions. And then another community was able to look at their leadership roles and their involvement with the activities to support the program. And then not only is it important to identify those program champions, but also to invest in the capacity. And so utilizing mental health first aid training to community members, that's something that we do offer here at the center. And that's a great way to get community members involved. And then training for staff, utilizing the adverse childhood experiences. Training is a very important way to invest in your community, in your staff, and building that capacity. And then also identifying a variety of resources, and resources are monetary, resources are people, resources are programs, resources are partners. And so being able to map, track, and join community meetings and events to meet other partners, community members related to children, youth, young adults, and families to introduce the Native Connections project and our partnerships. And that was in Single Springs. Again, it's bringing everyone together. And then at Seneca, they had the opportunity to weave together systems and resources for suicide, drug, and alcohol prevention programs and intervention programs to create a community-driven, culturally relevant program. So again, just bringing it all together at the same table.
I'm curious, Sienna, do you think any of our friends today here have done any of this work? I'd love to hear a little notation
I'm
from anyone.
sure that they've had to do some of this work with their Native connections, especially in developing their SAP.
If you are willing to come off of mute and share with us, we'd love to hear an example. Shy group here today, Sienna. It's okay. It's okay. Any GTAs joining us have any examples that they'd like to share of some of the sustainability variety of resources, working with partners, sharing your outcomes with leaders? Well, these are the tricks that SAMHSA suggests we use to sustain our work.
Hey, all.
Yeah.
Sorry. Excuse me.
Hey,
Hi,
Johnny.
Dominique.
Hi. So I work with a UIO. So our SAP to TAP looks a little bit different because we're not creating a tribal action plan. So to speak to this that you've got pulled up here, our plan essentially really is that community piece. So as just us as the UIO, Urban Indian Organization, we don't have a lot that we can sustain in the community on our own. So we've really had to dig in with our community partners and in offering things like the youth mental health first aid training. A lot of the things that have already been mentioned are things that we routinely offer among the community. And then we've also created those post-vention policies that include community involvement. So if one of our partner organizations does hear of a youth suicide in the area because of Native connections and this long-term vision of what we want to get from our grant, we've been able to create those systems throughout the community that kind of create that catchment for the families, for the other youth involved in their life, keeping aware of suicide clusters, like really the whole spectrum, and also what services are available dependent on county, on school system, on, if they're already enrolled in therapy or if the family or the youth, anyone involved needs the therapy. So sometimes that TAP gets adapted just a little bit, but it's not something that we've overlooked because we're not a tribe, I guess is what I'm trying to say. There are still a lot of resources provided through this grant and different viewpoints that can still help build that community framework for the work that we do here with Native Connections.
Thank you for that, Dominique. Can you give me a sense of, and you don't have to, but I'm just curious, do you go outside of federal sources for funding? I mean, do you get any state or local resources? Or have you gone outside of the Department of Health and Human Services on the federal level to find other funding for youth programming?
Absolutely. We have funding from all sorts of different sources, everything from private donors to foundations to state level funding. So that's I'm on the grant management team, and that's kind of why we specifically need grant managers, is because all the different funding buckets with their considerations and the overlaps, you do have to honor each grant specifically while you have the main goal of providing these services to the population. So each grant has their own caveats and specifics, but we have a really beautiful program and they really do all work well together.
One more question, Dominique. What are some of the key features that you share with a possible future funder to get to kind of hook them, to get them interested in the program and letting them know the wonderful things that you're doing for youth? Can you give us some tips?
I would say one thing that we really dig into is just our capacity growth. Um, we really have had steady growth since we were created in 1978. Beyond that, the new services, our integrated care model, anything that we've added to our programming has been so well received by the community. It's like if you build it, they will come. So we've had huge success with that. And that, that comes with careful planning and considerations and community readiness assessments. And all of those things go into it. And we are very numbers driven. So it's not that we just on a whim say, for instance, we're building our new clinic, 901 Navajo. It's going to like triple our capacity for services, but it's also included with the Native American Housing Circle, and it's a housing project in partnership with Mercy Housing. So we'll have 90 some housing units at the facility. So that's the wraparound care and the trajectory of our organization that makes that capacity and that buy-in a little bit easier to promote and to have the support for. But we also, at the end of the day, a lot of it just comes down to being able to manage those numbers and being transparent in what you do. And so that grant management and that uniform guidance piece is really important, because at the end of the day, investors, community partners, they're going to want to see that you're an organization they can trust. So while it doesn't always feel like the heartwarming, the story that we want to hear, that is a big piece of it.
It sounds like to me like you've made it part of an integration of your action planning or your day-to-day planning, that it's not an afterthought, like, oh, we better start thinking about promoting this work to other funders. It sounds like this part of the work that you do daily or weekly or monthly or quarterly or whatever. Is that right?
Yeah, that's absolutely it. When we kick off a grant, we already know all the ways that it builds into our programming and that our programming supports the grant. And our sustainability plan is essentially part of our action plan for the grant. So we're fortunate in the folks that we have that are able to have that like big picture mentality. But yes, you're absolutely right that everything we do kind of feeds in. And then once you get in cycle with it, it's really intuitive and it kind of just becomes the norm. That vision for the future and making sure that you put down all the groundwork properly. That's where our leadership is incredible, and that they have those foresights.
Oh, so this falls in the realm of leadership. Do you have a community advisory board?
We do. Our board is incredible. They're each a stronghold within the community. And then when you get them together, the support and insights that they're able to provide to the organization is unmatched. I've been nothing but blown away by our board. So, and it's on every level. It's like you said, the daily, weekly, monthly. we have those check-ins, we have that accountability. The board double, triple checks everything we do. We use a third-party audit service to make sure that how we think that we're tracking and is going well does in fact go well, voting to that sustainability down the road. So this turned into a much bigger conversation, but it's a lot of pieces, but it works.
One last question before I let you
Sure.
go, Dominique. Do you build that in? Is there a line item that you have to support this work, or do you just add pro bono, whatever you do, just to make this outreach to look for other funding? Is that just woven in and just absorbed into the cost of the program, or do you have a special line to focus on that?
In terms of like our operational budget as a whole,
Yes.
that's somewhat of a tricky answer. With those budgets are always created with the consideration for the funding that we do have available. However, while we might not be able to maintain the pace of the work that we do with youth currently under Native Connections, because we're excuse me, we are hosting so many workshops and things like that, we won't stop the work with youth or with community members or the ways that we reach out to youth because we no longer have the Native Connections grant. So to kind of answer that question, like, yes, we've got to budget it in because we recognize how essential it is for our community and the unique risks that our youth have. But right now, we are able to put a lot more resources to it because we're covered for this grant and maybe hopefully able to apply for it again and get it again because it has completely changed the landscape of what we're able to offer.
Wonderful. Thank you, dear. Thank you so much. Judy, did you have anything, Sienna, before we move forward?
No, I don't. I was just interested, Dominic mentioned post-vention policies. I was wondering if she could share a copy of that.
Dominique, do you have a second?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just double check. It's in board review as the formal policy, and I'm not on the policy committee, so I just don't know what our like I don't know if we have a policy on sharing our policy before it's been approved because we do have that board governance level. Seems a little silly, but I would be happy to at least share like the brackets of it and like our general plan or the development part for it, even if I can't share the official policy until it's been approved. If you want to just like plug in your email or something like that, I'd be happy to send you what I'm able to share.
Oh, thank you so
Also,
much. Yeah,
maybe
I'll put my
Judy and
email.
Marie, maybe Judy and Marie could connect offline too.
Um, Judy and Marie.
Yes, Marie is the GTA.
Oh, okay. I was wondering why Marie. And so, Dominic, where are you located?
They are in
Um,
Denver, the
oh,
Denver
thanks, Tina.
Indian Health
Denver.
and Family Services.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Dominique. We're going to move forward, talking a little bit more about the SAP to TAP connection and similarities. Just to show you how similar they are, they use all of the same tools, the gathering of Native Americans as a way to develop a common vision, gather data on what the community thinks as what could be a solution to focus on. Community readiness assessment, the CRM, they both use those tools. The CSA, a great way to do some asset mapping, mapping the community, finding out who your potential partners are that you want to start to kind of build relationships with at the very beginning, so that you, when you get to years 3, 4, and 5, you have someone to really get the program going and help you with raising more funding. The SWOT analysis, to locate the strengths, weaknesses, challenges, and opportunities. NICWA's relational worldview, also a great tool for asset mapping. If you haven't seen it, I really ask you to take a look at NICWA's relational worldview. And then Tuckman's collaborative mindset. This is something that gets overlooked a lot by groups. The storming, norming, performing. How does that go, Sienna? Norming, storming, performing, adjourning. It's a really good, it was created in 1965, but it really kind of helps groups that are just forming with a new grant figure out the whole dynamic of group dynamics. It's okay to storm when you're forming, you norming, you get to norming, and then you perform. So, and sometimes we go through that cycle again. So those tools are the same. And there's similarities that we just talked about hint at something that tribes might wish to explore further. And that's something that the Tribal Law and Order Act nudges through its various sections, nudging tribes to consider the possibilities of things that can be supporting for sovereignty and self-determination. A tribe can use their tribal action plan to coordinate existing federal partner resources that they have for youth or for communities that address relevant things like suicide prevention, missing and murdered Indigenous women, domestic abuse, all of these other things, opioid use, all of these things, traffic people. You can start to, all those groups that you've worked with, all the efforts, coordinate those existing federal sources under one tribal action plan. You don't need a bunch of tribal action plans, one tribal action plan to rule them all. You can use a TAP to inform future resources that you would get from not just federal sources, but state and local. And you can use a TAP to help you strategize or direct future resources and plans. Sienna, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
Not at this particular moment. Thanks, Sarah.
So what we're asking you to think about is a cultural shift with it. Moving from a SAP to a TAP is really a culture shift that asks us to think about whether we want to continue to react to a coordinated tribal assistance CTAS solicitation strategic action plan of Department of Justice, a Circles of Care SAP, a Native Connection SAP, an MSPI or SAP, a Garrett Lee Smith SAP, or look at just developing one tribal action plan that you could use to apply to many of these kinds of federal programs. And this is sort of kind of an analogy of what it would look like. You could create your own plan, just as the lady from the Southwest is weaving her own design in that carpet, that rug, using strings and music. What's the word I'm looking for, Sienna? Streams of funding from various different sources. Sienna, did you have anything to add on this?
No, other than when you and I were talking, we had talked about the importance of, it being self-driven, looking at self-determination and sovereignty, and the ability for a community to develop their tribal action plan. It really is a step and a way to voice your position as a sovereign nation, as a tribe, as a community. So it's always, little things that we can do in our activities that kind of strengthen our tribal sovereignties is always important.
Yeah, I remember when I was at DOJ, I watched some of the wonderful people that worked there develop solicitations in their cubes, looking at old solicitations and RFPs and just updating them. And I thought, well, that's wonderful, but when was the last time it was informed by people on the ground level? And I know that it's really made with the best of intentions, but the best work that comes in support of a tribe is, I think, when a tribe has that say in what they need, where they need the help to be. And that's what a tribal action plan can do because it's tribal led. So wrapping up some of the similarities and differences with between the Strategic Action Plan and the Tribal Action Plan. The similarities are that they both have that vision and mission statement, goals and objectives. They're both data driven. Collaboration is a real big piece of both of those. They're influenced by the community readiness level. That's an important thing to find the frequency to be able to tune in, tap in, turn on to where the people are, where their hearts and minds are. You can do that through a CRM. A number of tribal departments and services are really needed to get involved in this work, especially with the SAP, if you want to do it well. Definitely can't do a tribal action plan without getting tribal departments or their leadership involved. Gathering of Native Americans can serve both of these SAPs and TAPs through gathering data and input to help the community to mobilize activity behind it. Differences. Strategic action plan is sort of at the 50,000-foot view, kind of close to the ground. Tribal action plan is a broader view. Think 30,000 foot when you're up in the big airplane, looking down at the community. Broader, bigger feeling, shifting from program level at the SAP to policy level with the tribal action plan. SAPs are generally federally driven. If you've got it connected to any federal funding, it's federally driven. Tribal action plan is tribal driven. So two different perspectives. Strategic action plan, again, is program focused. TAP is policy focused. Tribal resolution is required for TAP. It's required for some SAPs, but definitely for TAP. Strategic action plans will generally, they're living documents, but they generally end when the grant ends. Tribal action plan doesn't end until the tribe says it ends. It's a living document and it should be updated at least every 2 years. TAPs can address prevention, intervention, and treatment. They can address alcohol and drugs, suicide, missing people, opioids, and other things. Leadership must be involved in the development of a tribal action plan, and it must come with a tribal resolution in support of tribal action plan development. Sienna, I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of sort of introduce these questions for people to think about before we go to some examples and begin to wrap up the conversation.
So some of the things that regards to the SAP versus TAP and transitioning from the SAP to the TAP is looking at some of the challenges that the community may be facing with some of their programs that have sunsets and are time limited. And then also, looking at the community and helping them build infrastructure to support the lasting change. And that's really key. If we don't have the infrastructure within the community, then that TAP or any kind of document really is going to sit on the shelf. So who is the committee and a group that's going to keep all of that alive and moving and keep the tribal leadership say, hey, can you bring that TAP out? Can we look at it again? And then also looking, what is the value of having a TAP if we have grants that help support our services and systems. But again, this is looking at your tribal self-governance and your sovereignty. And so this is really the community saying, these are our needs. This is how we're going to address our needs and moving from that direction versus trying to fit your tribal needs within a framework of a grant. And then also looking at questions, who will do all this work and have we identified suitable partners? And that's why it's really important to have a really good working committee with the TAP that will kind of live and continue to breathe life into the TAP. And that's dedicated, community members at large. So it's not just leadership, but you might be someone in recovery. It might be some of the program directors, some of our spiritual faith-based leaders. So it really is a consortium of community members that really come together to support and keep that TAP alive. And I mentioned before about the resources, keeping in mind that resources is just not the financial aspect, but resources really are like the people, the community, the culture, the programs, and being a little bit zooming out from that 30-foot view, looking at what your resources are in your community. And then, of course, there are barriers and challenges that exist in a community when we're trying to implement anything new. So being aware of those things, being able to name them and being able to have some steps that you're going to overcome those barriers is always key. And then the last thing is, how will we know when our goals have been achieved? And that's an opportunity to kind of do another community readiness assessment And then also being able to just maybe, any kind of assessment really, to see how your community's responded to things. Or you might see a decrease of some of those key priorities that you've set forth in your TAP.
And writing out outcomes for each one of those goals, so you know when have we reached our goal. Sienna, do you see anything in the chat box? Does anyone have any questions before we move forward and show you some examples of some tribal action plans?
We do not currently have anything in the chat box.
Okay, let's take a look at a few examples. We're not going to linger very long, but we'll look at a single TAP and then a tribal consortium TAP from the Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board, and then
Which I
another
think will
single
speak to Dominique and the work
Yeah,
that they're doing over in Denver. So maybe this will give you some ideas, Dominique.
So, a tribal action plan, what we say during some trainings is we try to remind participants, don't feel like you need to include everything but the kitchen sink in your tribal action plan. The best thing we can say is keep it to 20 pages, roughly, or under, because it's going to be a public document. You may probably put it on the website. It will be seen by many. So we try to suggest writing it to the level of, make it so that your grandmother could understand or see herself in it. So what I liked when we did this with Oneida Nation back in 2017, they had a lot of great visuals, and I love the purple color that they used, but great visuals with the wampum belt and other artifacts there, their wonderful logo. They kept the font very clean, and you'll see just the elements. They've got their table of contents, just a page on their background of the work that it took to get the tribal action plan completed. Their tribal coordinating committee is listed there very cleanly and clearly on the left-hand side, and you see where you've got a variety of community people involved. You've got the grants development specialist from the tribe. You've got the cultural heritage person. Randy is involved. You've got an Oneida Nation Police Department was involved with the planning. The gang task force, the tribal judge was there. Elder services manager, family services was there. I think even housing was there, social worker, community advocate manager, domestic violence advocate. So you can start to see on the left-hand side, they included a variety of people from a number of services and systems from 360 degrees that touch children, youth, and families. So Tribal Action Plan is also not just youth-oriented, it's all ages. They have on the right-hand side their vision statement, their values and mission statement. Not a paragraph long. Each one's a sentence long, I believe. Very clean, very clear, very concise. They're bringing in their language, wonderful. Their creation story, outstanding. Visuals too, wonderful. It's very important. Setting up the history of where they come from, a chronological history of their governance. And environmental inventory. So they're beginning to share some of the data that they collected to get to the Tribal Action Plan implementation plan. They're sharing with us their community readiness assessment process, what came out of it, and what their score is. They're at the level 2 at this point. So there's only much movement to go up. Here they're listing their goals, objectives, and outcomes, keeping it clean and tight. They kept their implementation plan separate from this. The implementation plan really gets into all of the activities and the people and the resources and the time under each objective. But here they have the goals, objectives, and outcomes. Sienna, did you want to say anything about any of what you've seen here so far before I proceed?
No, I just really appreciate the integration of the culture within the tribal action plan. Just something as simple as the coloring, which represents the wampum, felt an involvement that's significant to the community. So I always encourage students to really make sure that it reflects who they are as people.
Agreed. Again, they kept it simple. They sort of separated this from the nitty-gritty details of their implementation plan. They just gave us their goal, the expected outcome, the objectives that would support those goals, the lead for each one of these goals, and gave the first 2 years of a few little bits of activities that they expect to have happening, and then their outcomes on the far right. I think very clean, very clear. Just kind of, we're not going to spend a lot of time on this, but just giving you examples of this is what it can look. It's not that involved. There's a lot going on here, but you can keep it clean. You can keep it under 20 pages. I like this one. By the end of year 5, implement a comprehensive prevention and intervention strategy that includes a sober gathering space in year 1, transitional sober living year 2, and a wellness campus by year 5. And they've got the people who are leading that charge. Very cool. They're going to establish a comprehensive youth development, prevention, and intervention strategy. Very nice. And then they end with what they're going to do to evaluate, monitor. They're going to get signatures from their tribal coordinating committee for continued support. And I think they end with this over here, their attachments and contact information, community resource list. And they've moved forward and they're continuing to update their tribal action plan as we speak. For the consortium tribal action plan, I looked at the Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board. I followed them since 2015. They had one for 5 years in 2015. The goals I put there right below their name. Their goals were to increase the capacity to prevent, screen, and treat substance abuse in culturally appropriate ways. Increase the knowledge and awareness of substance abuse. So they're doing capacity, knowledge, and awareness, tribal policies and procedures, intertribal, interagency communication and outreach, and increasing knowledge and understanding. I think that's building capacity as well. Sienna, did you have anything to share before we move forward?
No, other than Dominique, this is a great example for your area.
So the Northwest Portland Area Indian Health Board is in the region of Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, Pacific Northwest. So this is a lot of ground to cover. It's a big region. But this is their strategic plan currently. I guess they're wrapping it up now, 2025, their last year. Let's see what they were doing. They included an executive summary, nice, a little bit of a background of information to set the stage. Their table of contents, their vision and mission. Again, look, very clean, clear, doesn't go on for paragraphs, just one sentence for each one of those. They give us their strategic priorities. What are the areas that they're going to be focusing on? 5 of them. This is what they're going to do. And then they flesh those out in 2 pages per priority. They're looking at beefing up the administrative leadership and infrastructure. They're talking about focusing on partnerships, really important because they can't do this work alone. They're talking about looking at building up policy and legislation to maintain leadership in the analysis of health-related budgets, legislation, and policy, to facilitate consultation and advocate on behalf of member tribes in all the areas that they've listed, the 5 areas below. They're looking at focusing on health promotion to support promotion and disease prevention activities among tribes. And they wrap it up with research and surveillance, supporting culturally appropriate health research and surveillance in partnership with the tribes. Good stuff. They share their values, their vision. Again, not very long. The 5-year organizational goals right there. They have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Their 10-year organizational goals. and the people, a little bit about what their vision is, and then they ended it. Pithy, just clean, beautiful document. Sienna, any words before I move to our last example? All right. Now let's go take a look at another single tribe's example of their TAP goals. This is from 2021 through 2023. Look at their simple vision statement. We unite to live in a healthy, safe, and culturally grounded tribe. And they've got 5 goals to support to get them to that vision statement. Goal 1, they're going to build awareness of substance misuse, its impact, and efforts to address it. They expect an outcome, and here it is. They expect that awareness of substance misuse, its impact, and efforts to address it has been raised among community members as measured by updated CRM scores. This is not their first rodeo, I can tell. They've got some really good objectives there. They've got a timeline, the lead, who's going to be responsible for doing that work, and what the expected outcomes are for each one of those objectives. Clean, clear, crisp. I love it. Most people could just pick this up very quickly and say, I see where you're going. TCC director, and TCC means Tribal Coordinating Committee. Second goal, create a sense of belonging. Well, that's what a lot of us do, right? For our community members, which include spirituality, cultural teachings, and personal responsibility to community wellness. Sounds pretty good. I think you guys are doing that, right? Implement emergency response and intervention for substance misuse crisis. That's a good one. Sienna, any thoughts? And anyone, if you have any thoughts or comments or questions, please put that in the chat box, or if you feel comfortable coming off mute, please do. And then they have a 4th goal, coordinate activities and programs with a focus on wellness. Their expected outcome is that program participants notice an increased ease and flow among programs that use the same language on healing and demonstrate an aligned approach to wellness as documented in an annual survey. That's pretty clear. That's very, very, very helpful. A lot of people involved in that. And then they wrap it up with their 5th goal, through partnerships. There's that word again. With tribal court and law enforcement, provide community-based, individualized services to reduce crime, recidivism, and substance abuse for members under the court's jurisdiction. Because that's where a lot of this is tied into as well. And they have the outcome, and they have a lot of great objectives, a timeline, and the people that are involved. The chief judge is involved. My goodness, if he's involved, maybe I better get involved too. So we're going to wrap it up with just a few words about the role of community and the role of tribal council leaders. Basically, when you're getting involved with a tribal action plan, the community should be there to engage in the tribal action plan development at every stage. Getting seniors involved, youth involved, everybody should be involved to get involved in conversations like what you see here. At this table, they were developing their idea of a vision statement by drawing it out in a visual. They should be invited to read the Tribal Action Plan guidelines, which are provided on SAMHSA's website. You just type into any internet browser, Tribal Action Plan guidelines from SAMHSA, and it'll come right up. Role of community is to encourage leadership to get and stay involved in this work, to share and support any information about the TAP to others to get them involved when it's being developed and after it's done, and to ask for updates on the progress. Again, a tribal action plan is a living document, so it should be renewed and updated every year, but at the very least every 2 years. Role of tribal council members: read those TAP guidelines, produce a tribal resolution for the development of a TAP to support its development. Call for the establishment of a tribal coordinating committee. Get out there, engage personally in the TAP development, developing policies, protocols, procedures, reviewing existing programs that might weave their goals into the TAP. Maybe a leader thinks of a program that nobody else thought about. Say, bring them in as well. Promote TAP development. Be a champion for the Tribal Action Plan. Ask department heads to get involved and locate and try to get some of their resources, which is tricky, from their departments involved in the TAP. Ask for progress reports on how it's going. Mention the TAP goals whenever possible. Memorize the TAP vision so that you can share it with anyone. Celebrate. Call for opportunities to recognize early successes when the TAP is developed. Have a celebration. Promote it. Get it out there. Circulate it. And remind the Tribal Coordinating Council to maintain and update the TAP. Keep it fresh. And that's what I've got. Sienna, any closing words or any thoughts or questions from people in the group?
No, Sarah, I think there was just one more slide that I think we were closing out with that had
Yes, the
there
planning
we
process.
go, the TAP planning process.
This is what it looks like if you get involved. If these are our next steps, asking you if you are interested in doing the tribal action plan. This is what a slide of slides of what happens in the whole process. Sienna, did you want to say anything about this slide?
No, just encouraging folks if you are thinking about doing a tribal action plan to please reach out so then we could have a conversation with you and your GTA and kind of walk you through what it looks like. As you have learned these past two calls, is that you are doing some of the work already that we would do with communities who are not Native Connection grantees. So having your community readiness model and having your assessments done, looking at that is like a big step. Utilizing the GONA framework to get additional data and information is also really helpful. But you have all the key components in place already. So we really encourage everyone to consider to bring this forward to your community, to your leadership, and say, hey, I think this is the next best step for us. So we just encourage everyone to consider tribal action plans.
Great. And maybe there's a couple of questions of why someone wouldn't want to do a TAP. I always think about that. I'm like, but why wouldn't somebody want to do a TAP? Well, everybody should want to do a TAP, but maybe there are some reasons why someone might not want to do it yet. But nevertheless, any questions for us before we sign off today? Is this slide available on the website too? It's on a link. I'm just wondering, Mark, if I don't have the link right in front of me, but I can get it. And how do I share that with everybody? Or at least with Sarah?
I can send that out for you to all the participants who
Fabulous.
registered.
Sarah, I will look for that list from Mark and I'll email the link to this Prezi presentation for you so you can take a look at it at your leisure. How's that? It's good to see you guys. It's great to see you, Sarah, and everybody. Good to see you. Any other questions, thoughts? Thank you, Dominique. Okay, Kim, you're going to get a copy too. Any last questions or comments, Sienna?
No, I see people thanking us and logging off because they have to get to their next meeting.
Very good. Oh, okay, another request. Gotcha. We'll send that out. Maybe we should send it to, I'll send it out to everybody I can see on the list. I'll just send everybody a link. Excellent, Samantha. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time.